Good evening. America's cities are in crisis. What began as isolated attacks has escalated into a full-scale insurgency, with coordinated violence gripping major urban centers like New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago on a weekly basis. Radicalized factions, operating under the banner of the so-called Global Intifada, are carrying out sustained, organized assaults on police stations, government buildings, and critical infrastructure. The result? Urban war zones where law enforcement is outmatched, and civilians live in fear.
There's explosions and gunfire going on down the street.
Authorities say these attacks are highly organized, with groups using encrypted messaging apps to coordinate movements. Every weekend, new targets are hit: courthouses, police precincts, even power substations, plunging parts of these cities into darkness. Many law enforcement officials are now privately admitting they are losing control. In Chicago, coordinated arson attacks have left entire blocks in ruin, while in Los Angeles, armed factions have taken to shutting down major highways, blocking emergency response teams. With law enforcement agencies stretched thin and demoralized, the federal government has been forced to step in, but even with increased National Guard deployments, the violence continues. Meanwhile, residents are fleeing in record numbers. Families who have called these cities home for generations are packing up and leaving, citing the growing instability and lack of security. For those who remain, everyday life is a struggle with food shortages, power outages, and an overwhelming sense of fear. Government officials are scrambling to respond, but the political divide over how to handle this crisis has only deepened. Some call for a massive federal crackdown, others argue that a heavy-handed response could fuel even greater unrest. But with no end in sight, one question remains: how long before these cities become completely ungovernable? As the crisis deepens, we will continue to bring you the latest updates. Coming up after the break, we'll speak with counterterrorism experts on what this means for the future of American security. Stay with us. Good evening. It is now being called the deadliest terror attack on American soil since 9/11. Tonight, Manhattan is in lockdown after a highly coordinated assault by Hezbollah-linked terrorists who, alongside local militant cells, launched a Mumbai-style attack across the city. Just after 7:45 a.m., multiple armed teams emerged in Midtown, opening fire on civilians in Times Square, Bryant Park, and Grand Central Terminal. Witnesses describe scenes of panic, bodies in the streets, and gunmen moving with chilling precision. Police sources confirm at least 3 improvised explosive devices were planted in major transit hubs, including the Port Authority bus terminal and Penn Station. One device detonated during the morning commute, causing mass casualties. The other 2 were disarmed by the NYPD bomb squad. Governor Jameson has declared a state of emergency, activating the National Guard, who were deployed by 10 a.m. to secure transit infrastructure and assist in urban operations. As of this hour, Manhattan remains under curfew. Authorities believe the attackers were affiliated with Hezbollah and may have received logistical support from Iranian-backed cells in the U.S. Homeland Security has confirmed at least 2 of the assailants crossed the southern border in early 2026, part of what intelligence officials now call a sleeper migration. The attack is part of what some experts are calling a global intifada, a transnational insurgency targeting Western cities. Over the past year, similar plots have been foiled in London, Toronto, and Paris. As the death toll climbs past 120, with over 400 injured, hospitals are overwhelmed. The NYPD reports that at least 11 attackers have been killed, with 3 suspects still at large. Tonight, the heart of America's largest city feels like a war zone. Streets once filled with tourists are now silent, except for the sounds of helicopters and armored convoys. We'll have more on this developing story throughout the hour. Good evening. It's October 23, 2027, and tonight we begin with a special report that's raising alarm across the country: the emergence of so-called no-go zones inside U.S. cities. These are neighborhoods where local authorities say they are increasingly unable or unwilling to enforce American law, ceding effective control to armed radical groups. Federal and local officials have confirmed the existence of at least 3 such zones in Michigan and Minnesota, with others reportedly forming in Illinois, New Jersey, and Southern California. In these areas, radical Islamist groups, some with ties to foreign terror networks, are enforcing what they call community law. In parts of Dearborn and Minneapolis, residents report that men affiliated with extremist mosques and militias are conducting street patrols, issuing punishments, and even operating underground courts. Police sources tell us that entering these enclaves now requires coordination with state or federal tactical units. The situation has drawn comparisons to similar enclaves in Europe, parts of Brussels, Paris, Malmö, where radical groups operate with de facto autonomy. Critics say it's the result of years of failed integration policies, lax immigration enforcement, and political reluctance to confront religious extremism. But law enforcement isn't just dealing with ideology, it's also facing firepower. A leaked DHS memo reveals that some of these groups have obtained military-grade weaponry, possibly smuggled in through cartel routes at the southern border. Meanwhile, residents are caught in the middle. Some, especially women and religious minorities, report intimidation, forced conversions, and retaliation for cooperating with U.S. authorities. Federal agencies have pledged a coordinated response, but critics say the delay has already allowed these zones to entrench. As the broader Intifada United States movement escalates, questions are mounting: who is really in control of America's cities? Good evening. We begin tonight with a nation in crisis. What began as a coordinated day of rage protests in over 20 American cities has escalated into the worst wave of domestic unrest in modern U.S. history. Late yesterday afternoon, demonstrations quickly spiraled into violence. Protesters, some armed, many masked, clashed with police in Portland, Seattle, and Los Angeles. In what authorities now describe as a coordinated escalation, armed radicals stormed several government buildings on the West Coast, including the federal courthouse in downtown Seattle. In Portland, City Hall was briefly occupied by insurgents bearing symbols linked to the militant group Intifada United States, or IUS, which has claimed responsibility for at least a dozen attacks since last year. Even more disturbing, coordinated sniper attacks targeting law enforcement were carried out in Dallas and Atlanta. Police sources confirm at least 14 officers dead and dozens wounded after what one official called an urban ambush. Then, the horror deepened. Just before the evening commute, multiple bombings rocked subway systems in both New York City and Washington, D.C. The attackers struck within minutes of each other, clear signs of advanced planning. At least 300 people are confirmed dead, with hundreds more injured. President Trump has declared a national state of emergency. The Department of Homeland Security has elevated the threat level to critical, warning of potential follow-up attacks in the coming days. We are now in what federal agencies are calling the most dangerous domestic insurgency since the Civil War. The attackers are a loose coalition of radicalized elements, some foreign-trained, many homegrown, fueled by extremist ideologies ranging from jihadism to far-left insurrectionism. As we process the scale of today's violence, we are reminded that this is not just a moment, it is a movement. One that law enforcement, intelligence officials, and communities across the country must now confront together. We will continue our coverage throughout the hour. Good evening. I'm Rachel Matthews, and tonight, the nation braces for a new chapter in the domestic crisis that has gripped America for over 2 years. In a stunning and unprecedented move, the Trump administration has invoked emergency powers under the Insurrection Act, deploying federal troops and declaring martial law in multiple regions across the United States. The official statement from the White House cites the escalating wave of urban insurgency, rising casualties among law enforcement, and what the administration calls domestic terror networks aligned with foreign adversaries. But the move has sparked outrage across the political spectrum and on the streets. Critics, especially from left-leaning media and civil liberties groups, have condemned the crackdown as the dawn of what they call American fascism. That language is being echoed by growing factions of radical activists who are using the government's heavy-handed response as fuel for recruitment. Our investigative teams have found evidence that online recruitment for radical insurgent groups has spiked in the past 48 hours. Telegram channels affiliated with Intifada United States and newly emerging militias have seen surges in membership. Many of these groups are calling this a turning point, a justification to escalate armed resistance. Federal intelligence officials, speaking to us on background, admit that while the martial law zones may slow the violence temporarily, they fear this move could radicalize an entire generation of disaffected youth, particularly in urban areas and among those already exposed to extremist propaganda. As we enter this critical moment in the American crisis, the question remains, will force restore stability, or will it deepen the divide? We'll continue to follow this story as it unfolds, minute by minute. Stay with us.